My name is Peter John Roth. I'm a local filmmaker and television producer in Columbus, Ohio. I've been, my whole filmmaking career is involved being online and having an online presence under my name, Sonnyboo, SONNYBOO. There was an indie film website called indietalk.com. It still is a site, where I started off as one of the newbies that was looking for help to eventually, over the years, became somebody that was giving advice. On that site in late May of 2012, I saw a post where some guy was talking about how he was posing as a homeless person for a documentary about the homeless problem, and then how he kind of got to shower with two strippers. And thought it was kind of crass, didn't think much of it till he started kind of attacking another girl that posts on the site who I'm friends with. So once he started attacking her, all I said is like, well, she has a point. You got all serious with her, but nothing in your original post was all that serious. And it just kind of went back and forth. And then he eventually got kicked off the site. It turns out he had been kicked off the site several times for the past year. I mean, the owner of the site, the admin, contacted me and said, yeah, we've had a problem with this guy for a while, and he's zeroing in on you now. I was like, oh, okay. This was like his fourth or fifth new account of fake accounts that he kept forming because he got kicked off for causing fights and fighting with people. And so I didn't even know any of that at the time. And then a week later, I had forgotten this even happened, and the guy sends me an email with kind of his life story, which I kind of skimmed but didn't read, and I was like, wait a minute. So he was talking about Indie Talk, and I'm like, wait a minute, are you the guy? Because, the name doesn't match. He was calling himself, he was using his first name and then his mother's maiden name. And I was like, I don't know who you are. And I was like, wait, are you the guy that was talking about being homeless and the two stripper thing? I was like, because he was talking about suing the website and he wanted me to join him and I was like, I'm not really interested in any of that. And then he kept emailing me, and the emails kept getting longer until I finally said, listen, I don't really have anything to do with this. I don't think you have a case. I don't know what you want from me, so please stop emailing me. And that's when he started sending emails that just kept calling me a fat fuck. That seems to be his recurring thing with me. I don't know if he's not aware that I already know that I'm overweight, but it doesn't, that might have bothered me in the third grade, but not really in my 40s. So I didn't think much of it. And, when at the time, it was very stressful. I was at the end of a 10-and-a-half-year relationship with my girlfriend. And it was already a very frustrating time. And in a moment of weakness, the guy just kept emailing me until finally I replied. I wrote back a response to every word that he wrote. And I, was like, listen, I don't think you're famous. I don't think you're talented. I don't think your stuff is any good. These are my honest opinions, but I normally would have just kept it to myself. But he kind of asked for it. I mean, he just kept hounding me and wouldn't let it go. It turns out the guy is from Akron, Ohio, which is only about an hour and 45 minutes away from where I am now. So after that, he kind of went ballistic. He formed more new accounts on Indie Talk. He started writing things on Twitter about me. Then as the year went on, I got contacted by other people all over the internet about this guy. First, I got messages on YouTube from someone who I don't know, telling me what his full real name was and telling me that he had a criminal record. I found that interesting because it's like, well, that fits. And then I started getting contacted by about 5 or 6 people from the dating site called OkCupid.com. And they had documented a whole thing to where on the forums of OkCupid, he had gotten on and he had, made a dating profile, but was really there to promote his homeless documentary and kind of beg for money to help him stop being homeless. And so everybody found me because he had been writing about me on his public tweets, his blog spot posts, and everywhere else. He's mentioning me by name, and my online name is sonnyboo, and I'm not hard to find. So I started, these people started getting in touch with me. Other people that got a hold of me were Ayla Ryan, Les Claypool, and his wife, Leanne. They all started to get a hold of me, and it was interesting. And it was through Ayla's blog in 2013 where there was a big U-turn for me in terms of, this was kind of mildly interesting because it's like, well, this guy's obsessed with me, which always mystifies me because I don't think that I'm that interesting. But it's also more of, seeing that he's been doing this to a lot of people for a long time didn't make sense. And it was through this kind of first collective of people that we were all just keeping in contact that you started to see somebody had talked to because the guy has two kids from two different mothers. One was a high school sweetheart where he had a son, and then he had a fairly young daughter. Well, somebody had gotten a hold of the second baby mama, and she had forwarded on all of her police reports and court records showing that the guy was actually pretty violent. And that's where it became something else for me. I mean, that's when suddenly this became a lot more serious. It's one thing to have, just an online troll. Yeah, the internet tends to be a place where people can be rude to each other without any real consequence. It's not the real world. And people tend to say things that they wouldn't be able to get away with in real life. Not sitting face to face with someone, you wouldn't say something nearly as rude. So, I didn't take this that seriously until you see that in the real world, this guy was actually pretty nasty. I mean, he had a criminal record where he had a emergency domestic violence protection order against him by his then pregnant girlfriend. So it was, and then that was, reading the police reports of all that kind of U-turned it and makes everything very different in that regard. You suddenly see it as, this is a little more serious than I thought. I mean, what went through my mind was, because it wasn't just that she got the emergency domestic violence order, it's the fact that he'd gone to prison for violating it at least 4 times. And what that said to me was, he violated, a restraining order 4 times. That's somebody who, mentally really doesn't think the rules apply to him. And that scared me more than anything. And that's when I started taking this very much more seriously. But at the same time, I tried to stay more as just an observer. I mean, I would reply and whatnot to Ayla's blog and everything, and of course, the guy would see it, he would reply, and he would write I would write a reply on Ayla's blog, and he would reply to it, or reply to everybody, and then he would also be sending us all emails, either one-on-one or as a collective or whatever. He seemed to always want an audience to the things he was doing. It was never just, sending one email to one person usually isn't enough for him. It's got to be to a large group of people. It seems like he wants attention. So what happened was, eventually at the end of 2013, I was like, he doesn't seem as interested in me. I'm not that interested in this anymore. He seems to be all talk with when it comes to me. So I just kind of let it go. And then, I had tried to block all of his email addresses. And every time I'd see a new one show up, like he'd create a new email address, I would just add that to the, spam folder thing. And I had one folder set for just his stuff. And at one point in 2014, I had a show on PBS, and the station contacted me saying, you might want to look into this guy. He's emailing us. And at first, he was asking how to get his documentaries on our channel. And then he started saying that I was abusing the disabled. It made no sense. And he was trying to get them to drop me. And that was in 2014. That didn't really do much. They were like, well, we're just going to ignore him. Then in 2015, I started getting emails from the group of people. I mean, at some point I spoke with Diane Diamond. She'd been contacted by the guy, and she, of course, found me. It wasn't, again, I get named quite often, so it wasn't hard to find me. And she got added to the list of people being contacted and whatever. Then in like January or February of 2015, started an enormous kind of email chain, and I didn't notice until I was getting replies but couldn't see what initiated them because I blocked all his email addresses. So then I looked at my spam folder and realized he had not stopped emailing me. At least once every month, if not a couple times a month, the whole time. And I didn't realize it. And then in seeing his emails where he was asking me to leave him alone when I hadn't replied to him in over almost 2 years in any form, it was kind of ridiculous. So, of course, yet again, I don't know I can't remember what my exact circumstances were at that point, but I replied more to everybody else. It was like, yeah, you're nuts. Stop emailing me. I have no interest in any of this. And then he just kept going and kept going. I mean, and at one point this is where, just like that initial set of reactions in 2012, I was not polite. I was beyond impolite. I was very rude because I didn't want to be contacted by this person. I don't like seeing bullies trying to bully people. So I have a tendency to want to say something, and I try to avoid these kind of altercations anymore, but in those moments of weakness, I would reply. You reach that point of frustration where somebody is accusing you over and over and over again of something so ludicrous, you just want to say something. You want to reply and defend yourself, even though the whole point is he's trying to get a rise out of you. And everybody has those moments of weakness, and I get them more than most, I guess, because I replied a few times in 2015. And when I replied, I would be sarcastic. Like there was one time where I had said something about, he found my address for my office online, which is in Westerville, Ohio. And so he started saying he was going to deal with the Westerville cops, and I said, go right ahead. I know the chief of police, which, in all actuality, I didn't know at all. So he started emailing the chief of police and me, saying that he was going to expose their corruption and whatnot. It just got ludicrous. And the fascinating part for me was kind of watching through the years on Facebook or forums or Twitter or wherever, there's a pretty consistent pattern. He goes into a group, and sometimes he'll start subtle and just interact a little bit, but the moment anybody questions him about anything, he starts making his blustering claims of being uber famous, very important, very rich, and people start to question it because most people who are famous and rich don't have to tell you that. There's usually some kind of third-party verification. You can usually find something online if somebody actually is famous. Like, I'm not famous, not even a little bit, but if you search my name, you can find, a couple thousand pieces of evidence that I've done this other work and other people have commented on it. There's like a major footprint to what I've done. Like, you could look at tvguide.com and see that I have a show on TV. So if I say I have a TV show on, you can prove it. Yeah, like one of the things he started to say when he started to get accused early on of, again, he completely misrepresents things that have been said in the past because they're either long deleted or long forgotten or hard to find. And he's claimed that I said he was never making his movie, and that's not true. I said I don't think it's actually technically what I consider a documentary. I mean, it's first-person narrative without interviewing anybody else. There's no other perspective. To me, it's not a real movie. It's really poorly made. And I'm sorry he doesn't like that opinion, and I know that probably upsets him, but that's honest criticism is just something you have to learn to deal with in life, especially if you put your films out in the public. Not everybody's going to like it. You just have to accept it and be okay with that. And the thing he keeps claiming he's had a, what he calls, quotes, solicited TV pilot for Cartoon Network. But the real reality of it is he made a video that he put on YouTube, and he did legitimately get someone at Cartoon Network to look at it, but they said they weren't interested in it. Yeah, the guy from Cartoon Network had solicited an animation that he had kind of attached himself to, that he wasn't really involved with but wanted to be involved with, and then he kind of ruined the deal. But he still had a contact email address and phone number at Cartoon Network, which he then used to try to pitch his YouTube video. And they watched it. They just had no interest in it. They're like, oh, it's just kind of more like an abstract art thing. It's not really for us. So, but the email that acknowledges, the guy from Turner Networks acknowledging that he received it, started publicly posting, like, here's my proof that I had a solicited show. And all it said was, we got the link to your YouTube video. We'll watch it soon. And he doesn't include any of the other emails because they were pretty brutal in their review of it. They were not impressed. And that's why he never posts the other email exchanges from that. Because they weren't kind. They were honest, and it's embarrassing to him. That's not solicited. That's not what that means. When you say that I've made a TV pilot for a network, you're implying that you were hired and paid to make something for that company. And that is not what happened. And that's deceptive. I would consider it a flat out lie. But, so in 2013, one of the things that came up was his posts on Reddit, where he had 3 different posts going at the same time. One was saying, I'm a mentally ill filmmaker and I need money or I need help. Another one was saying, I'm a mentally ill filmmaker and the LGBT community is leaving me for dead, and started insulting them, saying that a gay man raped him when he needed help from a Craigslist ad of a place to stay. Obviously that doesn't go over too well, and it got pretty contentious with a lot of the users. And, and the footprints of this are all out there, and as always, once he gets banned under one name, he just makes a new account and starts replying again, pretending to be either another version of himself or supporting himself. It's just kind of surreal, his need for validation. But more importantly is with the Reddit stuff, he also got discovered by some other user, a guy who at the time worked at Google, who took him in, who actually went and, it's hard to tell what's true and what isn't true, but what's absolutely true is either he picked him up or he moved in with them or whatever. There's a guy that took him in and started supporting him financially. And he apparently still is to this day. And that's just the most surreal part of this whole story to me, is because the guy doesn't work at Google anymore, he works at Facebook now. And with that has come, he's given him money, he's given him a car, or multiple cars. And that's not an insignificant amount of money. And it's just completely surreal to me. Because it's allowed him to do things. So for me, where the story goes is in late 2015, he was still actively, he was contacting, my TV show had gotten nominated for Emmys, and he started actually writing emails to the Emmy committee and threatening them, to the point where they had to hire extra security for the actual regional Emmy event because of him. And it was completely surreal to have to deal with that. And that's when I took things to the city prosecutor's office. I'm like, look, I take this guy a lot more seriously. He's trying to actually affect my career. It's not just emails anymore. This is actually trying to do something. So I started working with the city prosecutor's office, and I filed for a civil stalking protection order. I went before a magistrate named Magistrate Erdy, and she took one look at his blog site with something like 7 or 8 blogs with my name all over them, with really crazy theories he was saying. She granted my emergency civil stalking protection order, like, instantly. And the moment we were off record, she actually said to me, she's like, you need to find this guy. She was like, she's like, I deal with this all the time. This is serious. So we tried to find an address, the city prosecutor and I don't know where he lives. I have no way of knowing where he lives. So we tried his last known address in Akron. Then we tried an address in Oregon. Then we tried an address in San Francisco. And we couldn't get through to him. So I posted, so as far as he doesn't even know this has been filed. So out of desperation, I posted a copy of the civil stalking protection order on Facebook, which he immediately saw, because apparently he looks at my Facebook pages a lot. Because he instantly knew and started blogging about it and writing about it. He actually hired an attorney who showed up for the next month. Now, the biggest thing that's, again, a clarification, because he wasn't there for any of this. He never showed up. He had a lawyer that he paid at least a $10,000 retainer to, because he told me. The attorney told me that. And we made an arrangement with the magistrate to say, okay, we're going to agree to these terms. If he accepts service, meaning because we can't have, the way this works is, you cannot have an evidentiary hearing. You can't present evidence if the other person does not sign for the paperwork. If they don't sign for it, if they don't accept service, then officially the court can't say that they are aware of the proceedings happening, and that's what they call ex parte. So the whole thing is, he's got an attorney there, and there's a new law in Ohio that does not allow the attorney to accept service on behalf of a client anymore. 6 months earlier, we would have been able to do it. So we cut a deal. If he accepts service, we'll keep this active for 6 months. And then if there's no incidents, then I let it go. It's not on his permanent record. And everybody walks away happy. We all agree to this. His lawyer, me, and the magistrate. The next day, this blows up in everybody's face because he is adamantly not going to accept service. He starts freaking out on his attorney, and it gets ugly. So, in the end, the attorney gets dropped, and we let this sit on the books for several months, but then the only thing that happened is we can't find him to serve it. So the magistrate has no choice but to drop it, and neither do I, because we can't find him to serve him. I never, ever would have let this drop. Never. And but there was no choice. If you can't find him and you can't serve him, there's nothing you can do. And being that this is in a kind of pseudo-civil and criminal court for something like civil stalking protection order, you can't hire your own process server for this. It has to be from a sheriff. And I kind of wash my hands of it. And he still emails me for months and months and months. For the next 2 years, he continued to email me. Usually in group messages, whatever is going on, I get these cryptic emails that are supposed to make sense, but don't, about whatever is going on in his head. He's including stuff to me. I'll get it included on an email that's going to, like, sheriffs in different cities in Virginia, and I don't know what that's necessarily about, or a sheriff or a city councilwoman in Flint, Michigan. It's like he blames me for whatever's going on in his world. And it's just kind of strange. The biggest thing that happened next was in late 2017 and early 2018, in January 2018, he writes a blog calling me a child molester. He pays a substantial amount of money to promote that on Facebook to people in my neighborhood. And that was pretty bothersome. I mean, that can have serious ramifications. I mean, the article has nothing relating to children or parents or anything, mostly because, I'm not a child molester. There's no victims. There's no angry families. There's nothing like that. It was pretty upsetting. It's pretty awful thing to try to do to someone. I mean, it just shows how desperate he was. But for the first time, I started to actually feel a bit sorry for him. Weirdly, I should be at my most angry, and I ended up getting my most sympathetic. And that's kind of where my headspace is at now, is really I feel bad for the guy, because again, I don't want to be an amateur psychologist, but it seems to me like the guy is hurting. All of this comes from a place of where he needs things that he's not getting. He's angry at the world. He's angry that he's not as famous as he wants to be. He's angry that he's not as successful as he wants to be. And he lashes out at anybody he perceives as ruining it. But, at this point, I really don't know what anybody can do. I mean, I have spoken to people at the FBI on the phone and via email. Really, there's not much anybody can do until he steps up his game and starts doing physical violence in the real world again. So when he also paid to promote that blog calling me a child molester, he started to, again, contact the Emmy organization. He also started to contact the PBS station that aired my show, and he was accusing me of being a child molester, and they decided, because according to them, he had sent over 400 emails, individual emails, in 2 weeks. So they decided to cancel my show for no other reason than they knew what he was saying wasn't true. They didn't care. They just wanted to stop getting emails from him. So my TV series that garnered 4 Emmy nominations got canceled over a false accusation that I have no recourse, because everybody's like, well, just sue him. It's like, that's easy to say when you don't have an address and you have no way of serving him. It's the same thing as what happened with the CSPO. With no way to find him, there's no way to serve him for a civil suit either. So on his blog, the only piece of evidence, he brought 2 pieces of evidence to try to claim justifies calling me a child molester. One was a drone shot from the Ronald McDonald House that shows a playground in 1% of the still photo of the drone shot. The other thing was he was trying to say that Mambla or somebody's logo has a triangle, and my company logo has a triangle. Well, my company logo was based on the Men at Work sign, which is a yellow triangle. And it's clearly based on the Men at Work sign. Instead of a shovel, my character has a slate, a movie slate. That's it. I mean, it's pretty black and white that those are the only commonalities. Triangle is a pretty common shape. I don't think you can really tie that to child molestation, but he was pretty desperate, I guess. So, the show's gone, and that's that. After 2015, getting involved in the emails again, everything, it was they were just really surreal. It appears that he goes through what I'm guessing are kind of manic episodes, where he goes through periods where he's more paranoid, more desperate for attention, more likely to believe a conspiracy theory, and then there's other times where he seems more calm. And it seems like he goes through waves in and out of coherent and not coherent. And I'm trying to avoid any kind of amateur diagnosis, but that's a consistent pattern. Normal, braggart, but then totally crazy And throughout the years, it's like, especially through 2015, if you just do basic online searches, you'll run into all of these incidents that all seem to be the same. Shows up, starts bragging, people call him out on it because he's making brags that are exaggerations to the point of being complete fabrications. He gets called out on it, never admits to it, eventually gets kicked out of the group. Sometimes these can go on for days, where it's a whole form of people, whether it's, editors from the UK. My favorite part of that, which I wish I didn't find it amusing, but it's very hard not to, is having him tell this one guy that was very politely just saying, listen, he went into this group, this Facebook group for editors in the UK. It's supposed to be a group where they just tell stories of what it's like working with directors and producers or clients. He went in and started bragging about how he was the best editor in the world, and, people started to come down on him. One of the guys that was very polite said to him, listen, you just kind of misunderstood the purpose of the group. Try not to take it so personal. And he told him, you have no idea how things work in the real industry. And it turns out he's saying this to the Emmy Award-winning editor of Downton Abbey. So to me, that was kind of a standout moment of just how uninformed he is and how blind he is in his own little world. But he didn't even bother to check into the guy before calling him unprofessional. It was just awkward. And the other thing that's a little weird is he's gone through several careers. Again, back in 2012, he was a filmmaker. Then he was TV pilot guy. Then he became, environmental activist. He literally wrote once that he watched Erin Brockovich in a motel room and decided that's what he wants to do. And then, before that, when he was a kid, apparently he had been a guitar player. So he's also a professional musician, even though, I've never heard of anybody ever paying him to be a musician. So it's, again, you have a guy that's braggadocious, perpetually changing careers, and none of it made sense. Yeah, back in 2015 or 2016, I spoke with this woman. Once one of these public things had gone up, because there were at least 4 or 5 times that the guy had posted on Facebook and paid to promote the posts to people in Franklin County, where I live. And every time I would get contacted by different people, and sometimes there were people that had heard of him from their own experiences, and one of which was a filmmaker in Cincinnati. This one was a documentary camerawoman. He had, put a post out saying, I'm looking to pay people to do this. And she said, I'm available. And then after 2 email exchanges, she's like, yeah, I don't want to work with this guy. And she politely just said, I'm not really available to do this now. And he started harassing her, threatened to get her fired, and started contacting the university where she taught to try to get her fired. He contacted my boss at Ohio State and tried to get him fired. I have a friend who's a PI, or a former PI, I should say. And he's normally the guy that would kind of talk me off the ledge if I was, being melodramatic about something. And he's the one who looked at this guy, looked into him a little bit and said, yeah, you need to be worried. He noticed something I had never noticed, which is over the years, from 2012 to now, his pattern has escalated. He is getting more bold, trying more things, getting more overly confident in himself. His delusions are getting grander. And sooner or later, he's going to reach that point. He's going to reach that point where things go nuclear. Because I agree with that assessment. But over the years, I've seen nothing but this guy go from being an email blowhard to actually trying to get people fired. contacting their work, contacting their girlfriends or boyfriends, and trying to start real problems. I mean, he harasses FBI agents and police officers and newspaper writers. I mean, it makes no sense to me how there isn't a problem. I mean, we just had a week and a half ago, the Annapolis newspaper had a shooting. It's virtually identical to what this guy's like, the way he harasses journalists. And nobody's going to do anything, and I'm kind of in shock. The pattern is all there. And MB Victim Resources, it demonstrates the pattern thoroughly. The guy is not entirely stupid. He has done things like he's figured out how to circumvent the rules on forums and social media. He'll post something like, when he wants to threaten you, he'll post the album cover for Metallica's Kill 'Em All, or a video for something like, You're Gonna Die kind of song. You know what I mean? It's like he will post that on your wall to send you a message, but at the same time, legally speaking, that's not technically a threat. I mean, things like that are disturbing, and it shows a certain amount of cunning because he knows how to circumvent the rules. Again, when I talk about his cunning, like one of the paid promoted posts he did is he had a picture from 2014 where he had a black eye with an epic story of how he supposedly saved a homeless woman from 4 Mexican gang members that then beat him up. And he posts this picture while asking for money. Well, over 2 years later, he uses the same photo in a paid promoted post claiming that I was trying to kill him, and he very misleadingly uses that photo to try to say that I did that to him when I've never met him in person, not once. I've never seen him in person. So, and again, that's pretty disturbing. You know, that's some, I mean, because again, it's like that's showing an intent to deceive people and get sympathy for himself. So there's a certain amount of cunning to that too. Yeah, I mean, I that's one of the few things I haven't been able to keep up like I used to with this. Things have just been too hectic and stressful. I don't want to add another layer of stress. But I mean, kind of like studying this guy is like my online real life Stephen King novel. Just like, wow, I can't believe that somebody is out there in the world able to get away with all of this. I mean, he's threatening people. He's causing harm to businesses and people's livelihoods, and he has no consequence. I don't understand how that's okay. So now we're at the point where, you know, here we are in the middle of 2018, and part of why somebody gets away with doing what they're doing is, you know, you can delete stuff. Stuff gets deleted. You know, threads get deleted. Accounts get deleted. So a lot of this evidence can dissipate like air if it's not recorded. So seeing collections like that at MBVR really paint a more accurate picture. I think the reason people get away with doing things like this is because of a lack of permanence, a lack of no one documenting it. So I think it's important to see this is an incredibly consistent, you know, pattern of behavior. I mean, a lot of this stuff can just disappear from the internet. I mean, I think a lot of what happens is I think he's relying on a lot of it disappearing. I think that's why it bothers him that archives like that exist, is because it's evidence that he's doing something horrible and wrong. And I think it's important to see it. I think this is the kind of thing that, not to be melodramatic, but I think that honestly, this stuff's going to get used later. I read the emails that he sent to Diane where he said that he was a potential mass gun shooter. He can deny it all he wants. He wrote that email to her. And I think that it's true. I think he is a potential mass gun shooter, and I think that he's going to hurt a group of people at some point, and all of this is going to be looked at and why did nobody do anything? And I think that's why this kind of archive is truly important, is because I think the signs are all there. Something can be done to stop this, and no one's doing anything. My name is Peter John Ross. Everything I stated in this recording is true to the best of my recollection, and I hereby, under penalty of perjury, am willing to testify as such.